And if my family were a small business, I'd be the unpaid intern they work to death but never credit. I'm the planner, the problem solver, the one who keeps the wheels greased while everyone else enjoys the ride. It's not glamorous, but someone has to make sure birthdays have decorations, Christmas has actual food on the table, and, this time, the crown jewel, my sister Jackie's massive engagement party. When I say massive, I don't mean a cute little garden thing with mason jars and twinkle lights. No. Jackie decided to go full royal wedding mode. 420 people. Custom printed invitations, floral arches, catering that could bankrupt a small nation. Guess who coordinated it all? Yep, yours truly. Months of late nights, phone calls with venues that only spoke in package deals, endless back and forth with vendors, spreadsheets color-coded to within an inch of their lives. Jackie would check in occasionally, but mostly she was sending Pinterest boards and then disappearing while I figured out how to turn her vague vibes into actual logistics. And the rest of my family? They acted like my work was just some quirky hobby. Grace loves organizing stuff, instead of me juggling enough details to qualify for a second career in event management. Still, I did it. I pushed through the stress and kept telling myself, this is for Jackie. This is for my sister. And even if she never thanks me properly, I'll know I gave her a once-in-a-lifetime night. That was the narrative running in my head every time I got a new wrinkle to iron out. And the night before the event, I finally let myself breathe. Everything was lined up. The ferries to the island venue were scheduled. The decorations had been shipped. Even the DJ had confirmed after threatening twice to cancel because Jackie's requests were too specific. For the first time in months, I actually thought, maybe I'll enjoy this too. The morning of the party felt like the climax of a drum roll I'd been holding in my chest for months. I had the final itinerary printed in triplicate. My phone buzzed with vendor confirmations, and the ferry schedule was bookmarked like scripture. I was still half asleep, hair in a messy knot, when Mom came into the kitchen with a travel mug and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Grace," she said, like she was telling me the weather. "We decided it'd be best if you stayed home today." The coffee nearly slipped out of my hand. "Excuse me?" She sat, folded her hands, and said the words people use when they want to look reasonable while being petty. "We just think you wouldn't enjoy it. Big crowds make you nervous. You'd be uncomfortable. We'll tell you everything later." All the planning months, the spreadsheets, the late-night vendor calls, the table layouts I'd debugged until 2 a.m., the way I'd memorized the ferry times down to the minute, condensed into an ugly little stone in my throat. I laughed once, a sound that felt like a cough. "You're kidding." Dad hovered by the doorway like an embarrassed stagehand. Jackie, who had been applying lipstick in the hallway, looked sideways at me and said, "We don't want you to be stressed. It'll be better this way." Dan gave me a small, awkward smile that crossed his face for half a second and then vanished. "Better for who?" I asked. My voice came out small and sharp. Mom's calm had a practiced edge. "For you. For us. You get overwhelmed around lots of people. Remember that time at Aunt Rosa's when you left at 6? I finished. "I remember." That wasn't the point. I'd never once flaked on anything because of nerves. The most I'd ever done was quietly suffer through someone else's meltdown and then fix it. I was the one who made sure the drinks didn't run out and the mic worked. I planned this party so Jackie wouldn't have to think about any of that. I had a role. I had investment. Jackie stepped closer, as if proximity could soften the knife. "It's just, this is huge. It's a lot. We thought you'd be happier not being in the middle of it." There it was, the language of parents protecting a child who apparently no longer existed. Their version of kindness had been swapped for the idea that I was fragile, quaint, a domestic decoration who might combust if asked to stand near too many humans. I felt my mouth go dry and then hot. You told me you wanted me there. I coordinated with the caterer. I sorted the invites. I finalized the guest list. I have the ferry manifest on my phone. "Those are all logistics, sweetie," Dad said. "This is about feelings." It was the most gaslit thing I'd ever heard. Everything I'd done, every urn of flowers, every confirmation email, the color swatches, was suddenly decoupled from the event itself and rebranded as mere logistics, while the right to attend was decided on a whim. I watched them load the car. Boxes of programs thumped into the trunk. Aunt Sylvia clutched a paper bag of cupcakes like a talisman. Jackie hugged me quickly, a hug so light it felt like an afterthought, then turned to Dan, who looped a protective arm over her shoulders. The scene had the exact choreography of something that had been rehearsed without me. Smiles, a last-second selfie of the siblings, quick waves. They drove off while I stood on the porch with my phone still open to the spreadsheet that had swallowed my life. The van's taillights blinked until the road swallowed them. For a moment, I thought I would call after them, sprint down the street, fling open the trunk and demand they explain themselves in front of the floral arches and 500 matched napkins. Instead, I watched the dust settle and felt the weird, sickening lightness of someone who'd been cut loose. Inside the house, everything echoed. The kitchen clock ticked loudly. I held a paper invitation in my hand like evidence. My name in the +1 line, where I'd penciled out family seatings the night before. My handwriting looked like a stranger's. I flipped through texts, a family group chat that bipped with a boomerang of Jackie on the ferry deck, captioned, "Finally," and 20 heart emojis. Not one message for me. I tried Jackie, went straight to voicemail. I tried Dan, he declined. I tried Aunt Sylvia, she answered, all flustered. "Oh, honey, we did this because we thought you'd be better at home. You always hate these things." Her voice was syrupy, the kind of phrase you use to soften a hit. "You could have called me?" I said. "You could have told me." "We did. We told you. You know how you get." Their assumptions about me, that I'd be overwhelmed, that I'd implode, that my presence would be a damp blanket, were offered like facts. I felt exposed, like a suit that had been turned inside out. All the invisible labor I'd done suddenly counted for nothing. The planning became background noise, a dusty tableau they could edit me out of without a second thought. I paced. I poured coffee that went cold in the cup. I opened the fridge for no reason and closed it again. I imagined better endings, storming the ferry terminal, shouting over the sound of gulls, unplugging the speakers, posting something dramatic on Instagram and watching Aunt Sylvia choke on her cupcake while the caption burned. None of it felt like me. Not yet. The part of me that plans and organizes prefers precision to theatrics. If I was going to respond, I told myself it would be strategic. It would be something that used the tools I actually have. And so I made a list in the margins of a notebook. Call the vendors. What are our cancellation fees? Check the ferry manifest. Can I get a ticket last minute? Gather evidence. Screenshots of texts, receipts, everything. Call Jackie again. Call Mom again. Find a quiet place to think. The house was too small for my anger. I sat at the kitchen table with my hands clasped, trying to figure out what I could do that wouldn't just be loud for the sake of it. My brain doodled logistical options like it always did, where to reroute the narrative, how to reclaim my agency, but my chest felt like a fist. Outside, on someone's distant boomerang, Jackie laughed with a drink in hand. Inside, the clock kept beating. I had 1,000 tiny, furious plans spinning in my head, none of which I acted on right away. I had to decide, be the person who gets invited to everything and then edit it out, or be the person who chose her own scene instead. I sat there and wondered which option would actually feel like winning. I booked the trip the way I plan everything when I want it to actually happen, decisive, color-coded, and with an embarrassing amount of research squeezed into one late-night spree. 2 clicks later, I had a refundable room at a tiny lodge up in the Silver Pine Range. No, it isn't Aspen. It's cheaper, and the coffee is better. A midweek lift pass, and a rental set. Skis, boots, helmet that smelled faintly of other people's bravery. I told myself the splurge was a medical expense for my mental health. It felt true. The drive up felt like the planet doing a hard reset. The highway narrowed, trees stood closer, and then suddenly everything had the kind of clean white the internet uses for wellness ads. Cold air hit my face when I stepped out of the car, and I laughed at how much calmer my lungs felt breathing high-altitude oxygen. I'd expected to be the sort of person who sits in a chairlift scrolling through passive-aggressive family texts. Instead, I found myself grinning at the ridiculousness of the mountain's quiet. It was the first time in months I didn't have a spreadsheet whispering at the back of my neck. On day 1, I took a lesson because my pride and my ankle agreed that was the smart move. My instructor, Marco, had a beard that looked like it knew how to flirt with avalanches, and a patient way of saying, "bend the knees," until it stopped sounding condescending. The first run was humiliating in the best possible way. A lot of falling, a lot of snow in my gloves, and then that tiny, ecstatic moment where the skis stopped being foreign objects and became extensions of balance. I remember thinking, mid-turn, that gravity had never felt more democratic. The lodge becomes a tiny social economy. You meet the people who make regular deposits into the same little bank of warmth. Elena, a nurse who worked nights and skied to feel like the day had won, offered me a spare pair of gloves after I discovered my left hand had discovered the advantages of frostbite. Sam, a grad student with a camera perpetually slung like a scarf, caught a photo of me mid-fall that somehow made me look like a dramatic human comet. We traded stories over burnt orange hot chocolate and snacks, with names no one who's lived in suburbia should pronounce. Nobody in that room knew my role back home. They knew I was someone who just bought a lift pass and a ridiculous hat. We started doing runs together. There's a bonding velocity to hurtling down slopes with strangers that makes confessions easier. Elena told us about late-night codes at the ER that made her laugh in the hallway. Sam was quietly obsessed with astrophotography. Marco lived out of seasonal contracts and collected funny fridge magnets from every place he'd taught at. I told them I was on a self-care trip and watched their faces relax in the exact way people do when you hand them permission to move on from rigid expectations. No lectures, no pity. Just nice, and try the blue run tomorrow. It's gorgeous at noon. The afternoons blurred into a montage I would later post as an Instagram story. A shaky boomerang of me on the chairlift. A crisp portrait of the ridge with the sun hitting the snow like someone had spilled glitter. A slow-mo of us whooping as we finished a run. My caption said something half sincere, half sarcastic. Needed a weekend where my +1 was oxygen self-care. And then I put my phone away. The likes came in slowly, like polite applause. The messages were small. "You look so free," from an old friend. A heart from my brother, which felt complicated in its own way. But none of those tiny digital nods compared to the real-time laughter that filled the lodge when someone doled out cheap nachos. Nights were the best kind of ordinary adventure. We ate under a string of bare bulbs, elbow to elbow with other skiers who smelled like sunscreen and sheepish victory. A fire pit outside became our unofficial main stage. Someone had brought a guitar, or maybe the mountain does that thing where it hands you a guitar. We swapped playlists and I learned the crucial difference between a serious skier and a person who skied for cocktails. The latter has better stories and worse knee health. After one day of too much sun and too much motion, my legs felt pleasantly worked. My laugh felt looser, as if a seam had been unstitched. There were small, private victories. I navigated a steep run without thinking of every logistical footnote I normally keep in my head. I let someone else, a literal stranger, suggest the next trail and didn't rally to micromanage details. At dinner, while the rest of the table debated the merits of quinoa, I felt my chest no longer a clenched fist, but a thing that could expand without asking permission. For the first time in a long while, my decisions were about what made me feel good, not what made someone else's party perfect. The social media stuff was a gentle echo of the real thing. A few curated photos, stories that lived for 24 hours and then were gone, like a lot of good things. I posted one photo that night, me on the balcony, hair slightly askew, snow lace on my jacket, and a caption that read, "Booked a seat for myself and the view's great." It was small and a little smug and, yes, a deliberate flex. The heart count rose. A handful of new followers popped up, mostly fellow skiers and one travel blogger who asked for a collab I had no intention of doing. It felt nice, though, to see people respond to a version of me that wasn't defined by everyone else's expectations. By the third day, I realized I hadn't cried. Not once. Not the hot, ugly drama cry I'd been bracing for since the ferry drove away. Instead, there was relief. A low, steady thing, like the warmth you get when you finally take the bandage off. I'd come here to get away from a family-defined role that fit like a costume I hadn't agreed to wear, and I found myself enjoying the feeling of having nothing to fix. Sitting with Elena and Sam by the big window while snow fell like a soft, steady punctuation, I felt a small, stupid pride. I had planned my own escape, and for once, the logistics were for me. That night, I lay awake in the little bed the lodge called cozy and listened to the house breathe. Outside, the mountain was enormous and indifferent, and exactly what I needed. A place where my absence from a party could simply be a footnote instead of a crisis. I felt oddly light, as if someone had finally put down the whole damn binder of other people's expectations and let me keep the pen. It was mid-afternoon, that golden slice of time when the sun makes the mountain look like it's been dusted with crushed diamonds, and I was slumped across the lodge couch with a mug of cider. My legs felt pleasantly wrecked, my hair smelled faintly of pine smoke from the fire pit, and my thumbs were doing the lazy, hypnotic dance of Instagram scrolling. That's when I saw it. Jackie's account, front and center, white text on a funereal black background. No emojis, no captions with sparkle filters. Just the kind of grim post you expect from someone announcing a breakup with their long-term partner. Open quote, engagement off, don't reach out, please respect my privacy. Close quote. I read it twice, then 3 times. The first thing I felt wasn't even joy or schadenfreude. It was confusion, the way you feel when a magician fumbles a card trick. This was her night, the night she'd cut me out of like I was a liability. 420 people, months of planning, tables of catered food, and now this stark, cold text like it was nothing more than a Tuesday. My fingers shook as I hit the call button. She answered on the second ring, voice sharp and wet like she'd been crying for hours. Grace? What the hell happened? Silence on her end, punctuated by ragged breathing. Then, you're not going to believe this. The story tumbled out, frantic and uneven. According to Jackie, the night started as expected. The DJ set up, the flowers looked perfect, people were already a couple of drinks in before the first toast. But then an argument broke out at one of the tables. Some ancient feud between 2 branches of the family tree. Cousins who hadn't liked each other since prom, or property disputes, or whatever small-town drama runs in our DNA. What began as muttered insults turned into shouting. Shouting turned into glass breaking. And then, as Jackie put it, all hell broke loose. Chairs flipped, plates shattered, someone swung a wine bottle like a medieval weapon. She said it was like a spark in dry grass. Suddenly, everyone was on fire with someone else's grudge. Half the crowd tried to break it up, half the crowd joined in. By the time the police were called, there were bruises, broken noses, at least 3 concussions, and, she whispered this part, 1 person who didn't get up at all. They said it was a casualty, Grace. A casualty. At my engagement party. Her voice cracked so badly, I thought she'd choke on the word. I sat frozen on the couch, cider cooling in my hand, watching Elena and Sam across the room chatting about tomorrow's runs like the world wasn't unraveling inside my ear. And Dan? I asked carefully. That's when her voice went cold. He ran. I blinked. What do you mean, ran? I mean the second people started swinging. He bolted for the exit, didn't look for me, didn't check if I was okay, just grabbed his jacket and disappeared. I had to hide under the goddamn gift table until the cops came, Grace. My fiancé left me there. There was a pause, heavy and awful. I could hear her sniffling, could picture her smeared mascara, the hollow look she always got when reality didn't bend to her script. And I, the person who had been declared too fragile, too nervous, too unsuited for the big night, was safe. Legs stretched out by a fireplace with strangers who'd already become friends. No broken glass, no bruises, no fiancé-shaped betrayal. My chest filled with something I hadn't expected. Not pity, not even triumph, but a dizzy, ironic relief. If they hadn't cut me out, I would have been there, in the middle of that chaos. Another casualty. Another person forgotten when Dan made his coward's dash. I'm sorry, I told her, and I meant it in a way she probably couldn't decode. Sorry for the fight. Sorry for her humiliation. Sorry for all of it. But somewhere deep beneath that, I felt the sharp, secret sweetness of dodging a bullet aimed with my name. Jackie kept talking, spinning through details about police statements, ambulance lights, relatives screaming, her hands shaking so bad she couldn't even sign the incident report. I murmured along, but the scene in my head kept splitting in 2. The nightmare chaos of that venue, against the gentle, laughing warmth of the lodge around me. Two parallel universes. One where I was abandoned under a table while glass rained down, and one where I clinked mugs with people who actually liked my company. For once, I wasn't in the story they wrote for me. I was in my own.